Hello everyone, welcome back. Today I want to talk to you guys about coronavirus gun buying. Okay, over the last 4 weeks, I've been contacted by a lot of people for gun training because they've just bought their first gun, and what I'm seeing is that they bought the wrong gun. Okay, so in many cases, basically they don't have any prior knowledge. They're just going into the gun store, and the gun store is making recommendations. Usually based on what they have available, okay, because basically, a lot of the supplies have been selling out, or what they want to get rid of, okay. So I've seen lots of people buy the wrong guns. So to make it really easy for you guys, I want you guys to consider for a second, when a SWAT team goes to execute, let's say, a high-risk warrant, okay, whether it's a house or an apartment, whatever it is. If they're gonna, when you see them in the news or wherever going in to execute a high-risk warrant, what gun do you see them going in with? Okay, do you see them holding pistols in their hands? No, the pistols are in the holster. Okay, you see them with shotguns? No, they're not using shotguns. They're using a gun that looks like this. They're using an AR-15. Okay, and there's a reason for this, because this is the best gun to use under stressful situations. Okay, and in a home defense situation, that's the thing that you really have to consider. You're not at the gun range shooting at targets that are not shooting back, that are not moving, that are stationary. Okay, in a home defense situation, you might be doing this in the dark because there's a blackout, or maybe the electricity was intentionally cut off. Okay, there's going to be lots of noise, kids screaming. So in a home defense situation is really, really confusing. And when bad things happen, they happen really fast, and you have to be able to react really quickly. And in that type of situation, if you have, let's say, somebody breaking into your home, your eyes are looking, are focusing on what's happening. They're not focusing on the gun that you have. Okay, they're focusing on what's happening, and they're and on reacting to that. So that's why that the gun that you use has to be a really simple gun. Now, before I get into the guns, right, and why the AR-15, on this table I have two AR-15s, and I got a Glock handgun. And the important thing to understand is that the handgun is a backup. Okay, this is a backup to the primary weapon, which is the rifle. Okay, the rifle is your primary defense. The pistol is your backup gun, and don't confuse the two. Okay, because a lot of times people think that this, because it's smaller, is going to be easier, and the opposite is true. Bigger guns are easier to use, and if you think about it, what do soldiers use? They use rifles. Okay, there's a reason why they give soldiers rifles and not pistols, because rifles are better. Okay, so that said, let's look at the AR-15 for a second. Okay. And like I said, this is one that as you can see, this has a front sight post over here. Usually, this is sold with a plastic handguard, and the cool thing is that the plastic handguard can easily be replaced, and you can put a quad rail on this. All right, and the reason why you would want a quad rail on this, and you don't have to do it on your first day, but you will want to get it, is because, like I said earlier, bad things usually happen in the dark. So you want to be able to mount a flashlight on the rifle. Okay, and basically on your home defense rifle, these two things are going to live together. Okay, and this one over here, you can see I can activate it really easy with my thumb. Okay, in the home defense situation, you don't just keep it on. You put it on when you need it. Go bang, bang, bang. Turn it off. Move to a different position. So basically, you don't give away your position. In certain instances, this can also be a very blinding distraction. So if you're confronting somebody, because let's say you got somebody that broke into your house, but they're not armed. Fingers off the trigger, safety's on. Stay back, put the light on, you shine this light into their face, that's going to back them down, okay? Especially with the lights that they make for rifles. These things, this one over here is about 800 looms. I got another one that's 1,000 looms. So this is an important part of your rifle, okay? Now, the other thing that you want to consider is the red dot. The red dot is also a very important part of your rifle. I'm going to show you this one here first. Okay, now this one over here, this has the free floated barrel. It's got the flip up sights, okay, All right, and then basically, right now I got these out of the way. I'm just using that. And what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna show you guys what I see inside the scope. It's not a magnification scope. This basically, you'll see a big circle with a dot in the center. Okay, let me come behind the camera. I'm trying to get the focus right here. There you go. Now you can see the circle dot. Okay. When I move it further out, it goes out of focus sometimes. There you go. We got it. So now you guys can see what I see. Okay, so what I just did is I showed you what I see when I look through the scope. And as you can see, you know, that's very important because, you know, as far as the iron sights on the gun, I mean, they're great, but in low light conditions, you know, it's really hard to see these sights. Okay, so that's why I need something that I can use in low light conditions in the dark. Okay, so when I come up, I can really easy and really quickly find that big circle. Okay, now the other thing is that inside, you know, a house, right, most houses are, you know, the biggest room in the house is maybe what, 30 feet. You know, most houses are 20, you know, most rooms in most houses are 10 feet or 20 feet. You know, very rarely you'll even see a you know, a 30-foot room. But at close distance, even if this dot was off, pretty much anything I can see inside that scope, if I put enough rounds, you know, if I look through that scope, you know, and start pulling the trigger, I'm going to hit the target. Okay, so that's another thing that you want on a rifle. You want an aiming system that is really easy to use under stressful conditions. Okay, on the pistol, on most pistols, all you have is these iron sights. Okay, so you have a little hole in the back here. You have a front post there, right? So basically, with a handgun or even a rifle that has iron sights, what I'm doing is I have to basically match up these two things. So in the back you see this, in the front you see that. You match them up like that, and then I put that underneath the spot that I want to hit. So I have to focus. I basically have to look at 3 different things at different distances. Okay, and usually your eye, you know, realistically your eye can only focus on one thing at a time. So the thing that you focus on is your front sight. So the rear sight's going to be a little bit blurry, and the target's going to be a little bit blurry, and that's how you shoot a handgun. The problem with this is under stressful conditions, especially for somebody that hasn't had a lot of practice, your eyes are going to be focusing on the target. You're not going to be looking at these things over here. So that's why a pistol or any rifle that doesn't have an electronic sighting system like the one I just showed you is going to be difficult to aim, and aiming is really important. Okay. Now the other thing to consider is with a rifle. When I pick up the rifle, right, I got one hand back here, one hand back here. Okay. If I move, let's say I see a threat there, and basically if I point my thumb, okay, I'm most likely going to get this. So even in a highly stressful situation, right, at close distance, if you know, I can, because my hands are further apart, I can really quickly aim my hand to where I want it. So, you know, and I can even fine tune. I'm going to go left and right of the camera. Okay, you can see how, you know, because I have one hand further out, one hand further in, and it's really easy for me to drive the gun and orient it towards the target. Now with a handgun, because the hands are together, okay, especially in a dark situation, you know, I might be pointing the gun like this or like that, and I see this a lot with new shooters. Sometimes they'll pick up the gun and they're holding it like this, thinking that they're aiming when they're not, you know, and then I'll tell them to line up the sights. But the point is, if you can't see these sights, there's no way you're going to hit the target. So in the dark, if you come out like this, you're going to shoot the ceiling. You know, if you come out like this, you're going to shoot the ground. So for a new shooter who has very little experience holding a gun, it's really hard for them to just hold the gun and orient the gun at the threat, which means that, you know, even if there's enough light to see the iron sights, it will take them longer. So if they come out, you know, because when I come out, I punch straight out. Pretty much my sights are already there. I just have to make a minor adjustment. But a new shooter with a handgun, because the hands are so close together, they're going to come out there like this, now they're fishing around trying to find those iron sights. It takes longer, and under stress, they're not going to be able to do it. Okay, especially if you have a situation where somebody's like literally running at you. Okay, so that's the other reason why rifles are better because your hands are further apart. So because your hands are further apart, it's easy to drive the gun. Because if I'm pointing at the gun here, I can see that. Yeah, one hand is obviously longer than lower than the other. If I'm high, I can. It's obvious for me to see that one hand is higher than the other. Okay, because your hands are further apart. Okay, so that's easier. It's easier to tell if you're not oriented at the threat. But if your hands are here together, now it's it's a minor wrist action. Because here you're actually moving your arms. Here it's just fine motions with your wrist. So again, that's the reason why the rifle is the primary gun. Okay. Now, other thing is I want to talk to you guys about the sling. So we talked about you want to have a light on the gun. Here, I'll go back to this one. This one has a light. You want to have a light on the gun. You want to have an electronic aiming system that you can see in the dark or in low light conditions. Okay. The other thing that you need on a rifle is a sling. Okay. And a sling, it doesn't have to be a super expensive sling. I think it's like a $15 sling, but it does the job. Okay. So you want to have the gun on your body, right? And the reason is because if somebody gets to me, okay, for one thing, they can't pull the gun away from me because it's attached to your body, and that's why you want to have a backup pistol. Okay, put the holster on. Now here's the thing: when you have a pistol, right? The pistol and the holster are a unit. They go together, okay? Especially if it's a pistol like this Glock that has a very light trigger. This gun doesn't have a safety. The safety is the holster, okay? Because when this gun is in the holster, you can't get to that trigger. You can't accidentally fire the gun. So any gun that's striker fired like a Glock, you need to have it in a holster. So yeah, the gun's over here. So in a situation where basically somebody gets to me and they're grappling with this gun, the gun is basically attached to my body, right? The rifle rather is attached to my body. So while they're yanking on this, I'm pulling this gun out and I'm firing, okay? So that's where the pistol really comes into play in a home defense type of situation. Of course, the other situation is if the gun were to jam for some reason, yeah, I can quickly go to my pistol, okay? But to be clear, the pistol is the backup gun. The rifle is the primary gun, okay? Now, the other thing I want to consider is, sometimes people bring up the possibility of over-penetration, okay? But the bullet's going to basically go through the bad guy, go through the wall, travel a mile, and kill some old lady, okay? Now, the reality of the situation is, first of all, the AR-15 shoots a 5.56 or 2.23 round. So if you look at it, right, it's a really light, it's a really small bullet. It's only a 55 grain bullet. It's even lighter than the 9mm bullet. So it's a really light bullet that has a lot of gunpowder behind it. Okay, and what I have found in testing is that when that bullet, for those of you who don't know, the bullet is just that piece right up here, not this back here. That's just the container that holds the gunpowder, the primer, and the bullet together. But when that bullet goes through a barrier, and a barrier can be a body, it can be sheetrock, it can be plywood. Once it goes through it, the bullet destabilizes, okay, and then it starts tumbling. So what will usually happen when I test it out here, if I have a piece of plywood here, okay, it'll go through, let's say, the first piece of plywood, right? Then, let's say about 20 yards down, when it gets to that second piece of plywood, it's already tumbling. So it goes kind of sideways into that plywood, and just by going sideways through that second piece of plywood or that piece of sheetrock, it loses even more speed. So what I find realistically is that most 5.56 rounds will, once they go through that first barrier, they will not get out to 100 yards. They'll usually end up in the dirt long before that because the bullet has started destabilizing and tumbling. Now, if you take 10 pieces of sheetrock or plywood and you stack them up really close to each other, I mean, yeah, the bullet's going to go through all 10 of them, and it's not going to get a chance to start tumbling. So what I'm telling you guys here is that the space between barriers counts. Okay, so in a typical house, right? Let's say you fire a round, it goes through. Usually, most walls have two pieces of sheetrock, front and back. So it's going to go through the first piece of plywood or first piece of sheetrock, then it's going to go through the second piece of sheetrock. Then it'll start going through that room and it'll start tumbling. And by the time it gets to the next wall, it's going in sideways, okay? And, in tests that I've seen people do, is the 5.56 caliber a lot of times doesn't even get outside of the house. And if it does make it out of the house, it does not go that much further. And by comparison, when they do tests with 9mm, for example, it's doing exactly the same thing, okay? It's still going through those same levels of plywood. It's in some cases it's getting out of the house, in other cases it's not making it out of the house just because it's hit a lot of things in between. But the point I'm trying to make clear to you guys is that once basically the space between barriers counts, okay? So if you do a test where you just have a couple of pieces of plywood or piece of sheetrock like almost stacked on top of each other, the bullet doesn't get a chance to destabilize. Okay, so that's an important consideration for you guys to have, and that's one of the reasons why SWAT teams use 5.56 in residential areas, in apartment buildings, because it does penetrate, but it doesn't penetrate continuously. Once it goes through a barrier, it starts destabilizing and it starts losing a lot of power really quickly. Now, the other thing I'm going to bring up really quickly is what we call a home defense plan. Okay, you got to have a home defense plan, and basically you got to know that if there's an emergency situation where, let's say, somebody's breaking into your house, okay, basically you get all your family into what we call the designated safe room. Okay, and that safe room can be wherever wherever you think you are in the best position to make that defensive stand. In most houses it's the bedroom. Okay, in other houses it could be the basement, or you might have some other room that you feel offers you a good defensive place to be. In my particular case, I have a 2-story house. What I want to do in a defensive situation is I'm going to get everybody upstairs in the master bedroom. Okay, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to position myself behind a wall at the top of the stairs, facing down. Okay, now why am I doing that? Well, like most houses, right? There's natural choke points. Okay, so a staircase, right, is a natural choke point. If you got 5 or 6 guys coming up a flight of stairs, well, they're all bunched in really tight together. Okay, and the cool thing about, like I said, about the 5.56 round, okay, if you have your barriers really tight together, okay, one bullet will go through all of them. Okay, so if I've got 5 or 6 guys charging up the staircase, I can fire this gun down the staircase, and each bullet I fire has a chance of penetrating multiple opponents. And the other thing is, because I'm at the top of the staircase, I'm shooting down. I'm basically shooting into my own basement. I know exactly where the bullets are going. Okay, so the point is, though, that's a consideration I have made. Okay. Depending on how, for example, if you got to look at the layout of your house, and you got to decide where's the best place for you to get your family and make that stand. So if usually it's in a master bedroom behind the bed, because the bed creates a barrier that the bad guy has to get around or get over. Okay, but maybe you have more than one bedroom in your house. So what I want to do is, okay, I want to pick a bed to make my, to basically use as a barricade. Well, if I have a couple of options in the house, I don't want to position myself so that, the direction that I'm firing in, if the bullet goes through that wall, it's going to go into the house next door to me. Maybe if I pick a different bedroom from a different, angle, the bullet is going to go in a safe direction. Okay, so that's the cool thing about home defense. You're on your own territory. Okay, you get a chance to plan this out in advance. You get a chance to tell everybody where they're going to go and what they're going to do, and you know exactly which direction you want to be firing in. Okay, so that's another reason why the 5.56 is such a great round. It does offer penetration. If you can get your bad guys all bunched together, either coming through a doorway, right? We call doorways the funnel of death. Okay, so if you can get all your bad guys coming through a doorway, or down a hallway, or through a or up a flight of stairs, that is going to give you a tactical advantage. Okay, so the nice thing about the AR-15, you can get these 30-round magazines. I like these Lancers. These Lancers are nice because they're clear, so I can see what I got in there. And the other thing is that these things are like really tough. Like I've seen guys test these by running them over with their cars. And these Lancers are really good. The PMags also do